I didn't know a night could smell this much like loneliness, until I started choking on my own heat. The radiator coughed like a smoker, and gave up. My ceiling fan was too tired to be useful, pushing warm air around like a lazy gossip. Outside, rain stitched the city to itself, neon bled in the puddles, scooters hissed by, and the noodle shop downstairs boiled bones and secrets in the same pot. My apartment was a shoebox with aspirations, cracked tile, a thrift store couch, a plant that hated me on principle. I had always liked the noise of the city, because it could drown out the noise in my head. Not tonight. Heat crept under my skin like fever made of bees. It started in the back of my neck, tight, tight, then spreading. My pulse stumbled. My body, which had always been reliable if opinionated, decided to unionize against me. No, I told it. I was alone, and that was a policy. We're not doing this. The air tasted like metal, like I'd bitten my tongue in a dream. The clinical term was onset, but I'd never liked that word. It sounded gentle. This wasn't gentle. This was a trapdoor opening under a life I had nailed down plank by plank. I'd spent years avoiding this. Schedules, blockers, routines, the whole monk thing without the robe. Fated mates, people said, like they were blessing you. I'd always thought it sounded like a curse someone printed on a mug for fun. Bond is just a nicer word for leash. I paced the length of the apartment. 3 strides, turn, 3 strides, turn, until the walls pressed in. My mouth was dry. I checked the freezer for backup ice packs. 2 peas, frostbitten, and vindictive. Useless. I checked my blocker kit like a gambler counting chips and getting math wrong. 1 patch, expired. The date glared at me. Great. Love that for me. I put on my jacket. It was raining, the kind of rain that picked a person and followed him home. Still, the thought of cold held out a hand. I shoved my phone into my pocket, keys into my teeth, then thought, better of opening my mouth unless I wanted to whine like a stray. My reflection in the microwave door looked back at me, flushed and glassy-eyed. You're fine, I told it. You've been worse. The reflection did not agree. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and detergent. I took the stairs because elevators made me feel like a jar someone could close. Outside, the city's breath hit my face, cool and dirty. Neon wrote unreadable letters on the puddles, pink, blue, the kind of green you get only from signs advertising the word open and meaning lonely. My plan was simple. Pharmacy, blockers, ice, lock the door, wait it out. The plan lasted until the first corner. Heat peaked like a wave, then broke, then peaked again, each time higher. It made walking both essential and impossible. I kept moving because stopping meant noticing how my skin felt too tight, and my bones were tuning forks. Someone laughed under a bus shelter. A couple argued softly in the doorway of a closed bar. The city was full of other people's stories. Mine was a fire alarm no one else could hear. I pressed my hand to a brick wall and tried to breathe past the shaky edges. In through the nose, out through the anything. I could smell rain, street oil, noodles. And then, like the first clean breath after a cough, something cut through. Cedar, cool and straightforward. Rain on iron. Not cologne. Not chemical. It unfolded the panic just enough to let oxygen in. A voice, low, steady, with the kind of quiet you only buy by surviving something. Are you okay? Obviously, I said. And then my knees considered doing a bit where they weren't knees anymore. A hand caught my elbow, gentle, not a grab, like he was offering me the idea of being steadied and I could take it or not. May I? He asked. It was such a ridiculous sentence. It took me a second to understand he meant it. Permission. In a world full of people who assumed, here was someone who asked. You can stand there and not talk, I said. That would be extremely helpful. Noted. The umbrella tilted over me. He was taller by a head, shoulders set like he carried weight without advertising it. He smelled like cedar and rain, and something I couldn't categorize except as safe. His eyes were a night color. Steel if steel could be warm. The umbrella clicked as he adjusted it to shelter us both. The world narrowed to the sound of rain on fabric. I went from sweating to shivering and back in a minute. There's a 24-hour clinic on 9th, he said eventually, testing the words like stepping stones. Or, I can walk you home. No clinic. Too many eyes, too much paperwork, too much will need a guardian to sign. This if you're not thinking clearly from someone who was not my guardian. I'm fine. You're not? Thank you for the peer review. Jacket. He flicked his chin at mine. Open it. You'll cool faster. He stood close without crowding, an old habit of people who knew how to move around skittish things. He didn't reach. He didn't tell me what to do in that voice bright people get when they're used to being obeyed. He just existed like a fact. My fingers fumbled the zipper anyway. Air hit my chest and I hissed. My body did an unflattering impression of wanting. Heat had a sense of humor. It loved when I pretended I didn't. I closed my eyes. Hey, he said again, softer. Can I lend you scent? I laughed. Short. Ugly. That a subscription model? Free trial. A beat. But I need you to say yes. The word yes got stuck on a point in my throat. Instinct shoved at me, giant hands. I wanted to argue with a biology that would never present its data. But the world slanted. And there he was. And I was tired of losing to a body that didn't take notes. Yes, I said. The syllable frayed. Fine. Yes. He lifted his wrist toward me, slow enough that a startle could be reversed, and held it under my nose. Cedar. Rain. A steadiness like a foundation. I inhaled and something unnodded. Just a fraction. The noise in my head turned from scream to siren. Not fixed. Not better. But there was a floor underneath the drop. Focus on breathing, he said. You're doing great. Don't patronize me. Okay. I heard him smile without seeing it. You're doing adequately. A laugh leaked out of me, small and traitorous. The rain softened into mist. The streetlight hummed. I could feel the city anchoring around us. Brick, glass, alley cat yowls, a bus groaning as it took the turn. The absurdity of standing under an umbrella, inhaling a stranger, should have embarrassed me. But embarrassment would have required energy I didn't have. The wave came back, higher. My vision sparkled at the edges like a bad special effect. My hands shook. I pressed them flat to the wall. Okay, he murmured. Okay. Listen. No, I said. Because being contrary was a personality trait, and I cling to consistency in times of crisis. I can ground you, he said, voice even, careful with the words as if they had sharp corners. It's stronger than scent. It will help you ride this out, but it's not nothing. Define not nothing. It leaves a mark, a pause, a bond. Not permanent if we don't reinforce it, but real. You set the boundary. If you say no, we keep walking. Or you can throw me in front of a bus, and I'll apologize to the bus. Turned out there was room for a smile. Thin and mean around the edges. Apologize to me first. I will. As many times as you ask. He waited. Not a hero. Not a predator. A person. Standing still in the rain. Offering a key to a door I didn't even want to admit I was locked behind. The word bond rattled my ribs. I had opinions about bonds. About how people used them to justify being cruel and called it destiny. About how love shouldn't come with firmware. Another wave surged. The world narrowed to breathing and not breathing, and the ache under my skin that said now in a voice I couldn't ignore. I wanted to be stronger than all the biology in the world. I also wanted to stop feeling like a live wire thrown into a storm. Say it, he said quietly. Don't nod. Don't let me assume. I swallowed like my throat was full of glass. Please. The words surprised me, soft and raw. Please help me. Where? His voice had gone even lower, not heat soft, but careful. Shoulder? Wrist? You choose. Shoulder. Less intimate, I thought stupidly. Less like a promise I couldn't keep. He stepped closer, not crowding, not claiming. The umbrella tilted. The rain's roar muffled to a hush. His hand settled light on my upper arm, a weight I could move away from any time. I didn't. I braced. The city and the storm and the neon faded until there was only the cool of his breath, the cedar of his skin, the steady counting in my ears. Pressure. A sharp, bright break in the world. Pain first, clean and unambiguous, and then a flooding warmth that cut the heat's claws away from my throat. My body, traitorous and hungry, exhaled like someone had opened a window inside my lungs. The panic receded. The edges of things softened. I heard my own sound, half sob, half laugh. "Easy," he said into my shoulder, and the word dropped anchor. "I've got you." I should have shoved him off. I should have said this was a mistake. I should have remembered every promise I made myself about being no one's anything. I stood there under the umbrella, and let a stranger keep me from burning. Morning found my apartment pretending it was gentle. Gray light sifted through the blinds, rain a rumor instead of a sermon. My plant looked smugger than usual. The radiator was still useless. I was on my couch, a blanket I didn't own dragged over me, the ache in my shoulder a low, stubborn drumbeat. The scent of cedar lived in the room like a memory. On my table sat a glass of water with a post-it under it like a coaster, drink. Next to it, a small packet of electrolyte powder and, God, an ice pack wrapped in a dish towel I did own. The stranger, no, the alpha, sat in my one chair with his head tipped back, eyes closed, a bruise of a night's worry shadowing his mouth. He'd taken off his jacket. The line of his throat was elegant in a way that annoyed me on principle. He looked tired, solid, not like a fantasy, like a person who had decided to be kind and then followed through. The bond hummed under my skin. Not a roar anymore, just presence. I pressed my palm to it through the blanket and felt the thrum answer like a far train. Panic flickered and then swelled. My body remembered safety and wanted more of it. My brain remembered rules and wanted out. I stood up carefully. He didn't wake. The umbrella leaned against the door. My jacket hung on a hook I never used, dripping into a bowl I never put there. He had been in my space and made it kinder. Somehow that made it worse. I wrote a note on the back of an old bill, because I couldn't say the words out loud, "Thank you. I'm fine now." I stared at the period until it looked like a mistake and then left it anyway. Underneath, I drew an arrow to the umbrella and added, "Borrowed this." It's raining. I didn't ask his name. I didn't leave mine. I took the umbrella like a thief, like a coward, like a man trying to outrun the part of himself that wanted to stay. The door clicked. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and choices. I told myself the bond was a glitch, a temporary patch on a broken system. It didn't have to mean anything. I went down the stairs and into the rain before he could wake, before his eyes could meet mine, and, make this real, before he could say hello in a voice I would hear in every quiet room for months. Between us was a bond. I walked away not knowing his name. Morning crawled in like a debt collector. My apartment smelled like rain, metal, and him. I opened every window despite the drizzle, turned on the fan, lit a candle that promised coastal breeze and delivered cheap perfume, but nothing pushed the cedar out. It lived in the corners, in the fabric of my couch, in the blanket I had wrapped around myself last night while trying not to shake apart. I'd left before he woke. Smart, I told myself. Clean break, except it wasn't clean. The bond under my skin pulsed like a low-grade fever, not loud enough to ruin me, just there, like the echo of a song you hated but knew the words to. I made coffee strong enough to burn through steel and swallowed it without sugar. Maybe caffeine could cauterize whatever this was. By noon, the walls felt close. My apartment wasn't big enough for me and my thoughts. I pulled on a hoodie, shoved my hands into my pockets, and went outside, where at least the city had the decency to be louder than my own head. The rain had stopped, leaving streets slick and shining. Neon signs fought with daylight. Cars hissed through puddles. A coffee shop on 7th offered warmth and anonymity, two things I craved in equal measure. Inside, the air smelled like beans, cinnamon, and people who hadn't given up yet. I ordered black coffee because milk felt like commitment. At the window counter, I watched strangers go by. Students with tangled earbuds, office workers, sprinting on late lunches, a couple sharing one umbrella, and still getting soaked. lives moving forward, like they didn't have a stranger's name carved behind their ribs. I didn't want to think about him. So of course I did. Last time I let someone close, it had been Mark. Another alpha. Different scent. Cologne sharp enough to cut glass. Smile like a closing door. At first, it had been easy. He'd shown up with flowers once, remembered how I liked my eggs, texted good morning like it meant something. The bond had come later. A whisper under my skin. I'd thought it was connection. Then came the rules. Where I could go. Who I could see. The quiet "I worry about you turning into you make me do this." Every possessive sentence ending with "because I care." The bond became a leash. He pulled until I didn't have the energy to pull back. I left the day I realized I couldn't tell if I liked eggs, or if he did. So no, I didn't do bonds anymore. And yet here I was, second cup of coffee cooling in front of me. The phantom. Scent of cedar threading through memory like it owned the place. The bond didn't care about my rules. It hummed at odd times, when I passed someone in a jacket like his, when the rain hit concrete at the same angle, when I saw an umbrella left on a bench. I didn't sleep much. When I did, I dreamed of nothing clear, just warmth at my back and a voice saying easy like it meant stay. I woke up tangled in my sheets and swore at the ceiling, until the neighbors banged on the wall. My temper frayed. The barista smiled too long. I snapped. A taxi cut me off. I snapped louder. Every small thing got teeth. Even my friends noticed. "You look like hell," said Casey on Friday night, dropping into the booth across from me. He worked in IT, believed in craft beer, and thought therapy was a podcast. "Thank you," I said. "Always nice to hear I'm thriving." He stole a fry off my plate. "What's up with you lately? Did someone die?" "You look like someone died." "Not dead," I said. "Just tired." "Work?" "Sure," I lied. Casey studied me like I was code throwing errors. "You've got that thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you vanish for days and come back with haunted eyes. Last time it was your ex." I stirred my drink. Ice clinked like tiny judges. Casey smirked. "So who is he? Or she? Or they? No judgment here." "No one." "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England." He leaned back, hands behind his head. "Let me guess. Tall? Mysterious? Smells good? Gives you that whole maybe I can fix him vibe?" I didn't answer. Casey's grin widened. "Oh my God, I'm right. There's nothing to tell," I said. "Met him once. Won't see him again." End of story. Casey raised his glass in a mock toast. "Sure. That explains the eye bags and the personality of a wet cat." I flipped him off without heat. He laughed, already moving the conversation to office gossip, but his words stuck like splinters. "Won't see him again." I wanted that to be true. The bond under my skin disagreed. That night, my apartment felt too quiet. I left the TV on for noise, curled on the couch with a blanket that didn't smell like him, until it did. The city outside kept moving. Sirens, car horns, laughter under streetlights. But inside, it was just me and the pulse I couldn't scrub out. I told myself it would fade. Bonds did if you ignored them long enough. I told myself a lot of things. Sleep didn't believe any of them. The rain had been coming down all morning. The kind that wasn't dramatic enough for thunder but steady enough to ruin plans. I didn't have plans anyway, unless you counted avoiding my own apartment because it smelled like memory. The bookstore on 10th had a cafe in the back, and creaky floors that made everyone move slower. It was quiet, warm, smelled like paper and espresso, safe. I ordered coffee and found a table near the window, the kind where you could disappear into the glass and watch the rest of the world blur by. It had been 2 months since the night with the stranger. 2 months of pretending the bond didn't hum under my skin, like a song caught in the walls. 2 months of telling myself it didn't matter because I didn't even know his name. And then he walked in. I almost didn't recognize him at first because I wasn't expecting him. Tall, rain-slicked jacket. The same calm gravity that made other people move out of his way without realizing it. He glanced around, eyes catching mine like it wasn't an accident. My stomach dropped. Coffee nearly followed. He didn't smile exactly. Just something faint that could have been a greeting or maybe just politeness. He ordered a tea, of course he was a tea person, and crossed the room, with the kind of confidence that came from not pushing too hard. "Hi," he said when he reached my table, like we'd run into each other at the grocery store instead of in the mess of my life. I stared at him. "You. Brilliant, Jules. Shakespeare would be proud." "Me," he agreed. Voice even. No demand. No accusation. "What do you want?" I asked, sharper than I meant to. He set his tea down, pulled out the opposite chair, and waited. Not for permission, I realized. For me to tell him to leave if I wanted to. I wanted to say I'm sorry. He said simply. I blinked. Sorry? For that night. He met my eyes, steady as a metronome. For the bond. For everything. You didn't ask for it. I should have done more to give you a choice. I opened my mouth, closed it. That was not the script I expected. Alphas didn't apologize. They rationalized, justified, insisted. You needed me. It was fate. You'll understand eventually. That was how the story usually went. He waited, sipping his tea like we were discussing the weather. You tracked me down to apologize? I asked finally. Yes. I didn't know what to do with that. The bond pulsed faintly, like it wanted to lean toward him on instinct. I sat back instead. Congratulations. Apology received. You can go now. He didn't. You left before I could tell you my name, he said. I hated that I wanted to know it. Well? I said when he didn't continue. Ryan. Simple. Solid. Like the rest of him. Of course it is. I muttered. One corner of his mouth tilted. You say that like it's a bad thing. I busied myself with my coffee so I wouldn't look at him. You found me after 2 months just to be polite? To be fair, Ryan said. I didn't think you'd want flowers. The laugh escaped before I could stop it, short and unwilling. You think this is funny? A little, he admitted. Mostly I think you deserve the chance to yell at me if you want. That threw me again. Alphas didn't offer you the floor, they took it. I don't even know what to yell about, I said. Then maybe start with telling me to leave, he suggested. I should have. That would have been the smart, consistent thing. Instead, I heard myself say, sit down before you drip on the books. He sat. We stared at each other over the table like two people who hadn't agreed on the rules of engagement. So what now? I asked finally. Now nothing, Ryan said. I'm not here to push you into anything. I just wanted to explain. And to see if you're okay. I didn't know what to do with not here to push. It didn't fit any story I'd been told about bonds or alphas or how this was supposed to work. I covered confusion with sarcasm. Well, as you can see, I'm thriving. Perfect mental health, zero baggage, and only minor caffeine addiction. Good to hear, he said mildly, like he believed me. We sat in silence for a moment, the bookstore around us creaking softly as people browsed and pages turned. The rain outside blurred the windows, turning the street into watercolor. I hated that part of me relaxed with him there. I hated more that he didn't seem to want anything from me. You're weird, I said finally. Ryan's brow lifted a fraction. Weird how? Most alphas would have shown up with a speech about destiny by now. Not my style. Yeah? What is your style? He sipped his tea before answering. Letting people decide what they want without being cornered into it. I didn't have a comeback for that. Ryan stood after a while, pulling his jacket on. I'll go. Didn't want to take up your time. I should have been relieved. Instead, there was a thin thread of disappointment winding under my ribs. He nodded toward me. I'm around. If you ever want to talk. And then he left, as calmly as he'd arrived, like he hadn't just tilted my entire understanding of this mess sideways. The bell over the door jingled. The rain swallowed him whole. I sat there with cold coffee, the bond humming faintly under my skin, and wondered what exactly had just happened. I told myself it wasn't a date. It was a conversation, a clarification, a get in, talk, leave situation so I could stop thinking about Ryan like he was a book I only read the first chapter of. That's why, on Friday night, I found myself standing outside his apartment building with rain dripping off my hood and my nerves behaving like I'd swallowed static electricity. I almost turned around twice before he opened the door. "Hey," Ryan said simply, like he'd been expecting me but wasn't sure I'd actually come. His apartment was neat, not in the serial killer way, but in the adult who folds laundry immediately way. Warm light glowed off wooden floors. A wall of books took up one side of the living room, spines lined like soldiers, but there were mismatched mugs on the coffee table, and one plant in the corner looked like it had survived a war. Minimalist furniture, soft gray couch, a rug with patterns muted by time. It smelled faintly like cedar and citrus. Him, but quieter. "Come in," he said. I did, shaking water off my jacket like a stray dog. My eyes cataloged everything automatically, because not looking at him felt safer. "You can sit wherever," he said. "I'd offer slippers, but I don't own any." "Tragic," I muttered, perching on the edge of the couch. Ryan smiled faintly, and went to the small kitchen space. "Tea? Coffee?" "Coffee," I said. Something bitter to match my mood. While he busied himself, I tried not to notice how the bond under my skin perked up like it recognized the place. Like being here made it stronger. I hated that. When he handed me a mug, our fingers didn't touch. Probably on purpose. "So," I said after a sip that burned my tongue. "This is me, not running away. Don't get used to it." Ryan took the armchair across from me. "I'm not asking you to stay." I hated that too. How he said things without edges. Most people wanted something. He just didn't push. "Then why invite me?" I asked. "Because you looked like you had questions," he said. "And because I owe you the truth about that night." I shrugged, pretending I didn't care. "Fine. Talk." He didn't start with excuses or destiny speeches. Instead, "I live alone," Ryan said evenly. "Work construction. Read too much. Don't like parties. Used to box before my shoulder gave out." I blinked. "That's personal." "You wanted honesty." "Yeah, but you could start with 'I'm not secretly stalking you,'" I said dryly. "I'm not," he said, a corner of his mouth twitching. I asked around because I wanted to apologize. That's it. The bond hummed under my skin, annoying and warm. "So this is your grand confession?" I asked. "Books, coffee, ex-boxer, very sorry?" Pretty much. I didn't know what to do with him. With his calm. With the fact that he didn't fill silence just to win it. I looked around again, at the scuffed bookshelf, the photo frame on the wall holding nothing but a postcard of some mountain range. At the faint crack along the window frame like a healed scar. "You're not exactly what I expected," I admitted before I could stop myself. Ryan tilted his head. "What did you expect?" I shrugged. "Alphas usually come with, I don't know, drama. The whole 'I know what's best for you' thing. Do I strike you as someone who knows what's best for anybody?" His tone was mild, but there was something under it, wry, self-deprecating. My eyes caught on the faint line along his jaw, a scar disappearing into his beard. Another on his knuckle when he reached for his mug. Imperfections, quiet ones. Like he'd lived a life that hadn't always been careful with him. The bond reacted like it wanted to lean closer. I stayed where I was. "You keep looking at me like I'm going to try to own you," Ryan said softly. I froze. "I'm not," he added. "I don't want that." I swallowed coffee gone cold. "Then what do you want?" He thought about it longer than was comfortable. "To know you're okay. Maybe to talk sometimes." That's it. No demand. No expectation. Just words dropping into the space between us like pebbles in water. It should have calmed me. Instead, it made the storm in my head louder. Because wanting nothing felt suspicious when everyone else in my life had wanted too much. "Why me?" I asked finally. Ryan leaned back, shoulders easy against the chair. "Because you didn't treat me like I was doing you some big favor that night. You looked at me like I was a person, not a role." I stared at him. "Most people," he said, "they see an alpha and think protector, provider, problem solver. You just looked annoyed." I almost laughed. That's my default setting. Noted. His mouth twitched again. Silence stretched. Comfortable for him. Suffocating for me. I got up, wandering toward the bookshelf to give my nerves somewhere else to stand. Titles on carpentry, boxing history, a couple of fantasy novels with worn spines. One photo tucked between books, Ryan younger, gloves on, a bruise along his cheekbone, smiling like he hadn't learned yet that the world hits back harder. Used to fight a lot? I asked. Not anymore, he said behind me. Got tired of bleeding for strangers. Something in his tone made me glance back. His face gave nothing away, but the line of his shoulders spoke another language, one made of old exhaustion. I sat back down before I could say something real. The bond hummed again, a quiet invitation. My body leaned toward it like instinct, like gravity. But my brain slammed the brakes. Ryan didn't move closer, didn't push, just sipped his tea like time wasn't pressing on both of us. Finally he said, "You don't owe me anything, Jules. Not your time, not trust, not a future. I just wanted you to know I'm not the guy you think I am." I didn't answer right away because I didn't know what I thought anymore. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't simple either. And maybe that was worse, because it meant I couldn't box him up and shove him out of my head where things belonged. When I left an hour later, the rain had stopped. The quiet followed me home anyway. The fight started in Ryan's kitchen because I couldn't hold it in any longer. "You used me," I snapped, hands braced against the counter like the cheap laminate was the only thing keeping me upright. Ryan looked up from rinsing a mug. "Excuse me?" "That night," I said, the words sharp enough to taste. "You took advantage. I didn't know you. I didn't want—" My throat caught on the word bond, like saying it out loud would make it heavier. "Any of this." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You think I planned it? I think you saw someone falling apart and decided to play hero." He shut off the faucet. The kitchen went very quiet, except for the rain tapping the windows like it wanted front row seats. "I stopped," Ryan said slowly, "because I thought you needed air. I gave you mine because you asked, and if you'd said one word, I would have walked away." I hated that my chest hurt. "You didn't have to offer in the first place." "You were shaking," he said flatly, barely standing. "Do you think I wanted you to need me like that?" The silence after was heavy enough to crack tile. He leaned on the counter across from me, hands braced, mirroring my stance but steadier, like always. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I thought I was helping. I thought silence meant yes. I should have asked better. That's on me." Anger didn't know what to do with an apology. It fizzled, turned into something messier. "You think sorry fixes it?" "No," he said. "But it's what I have." The fight should have kept going. I had the words ready, sharp enough to draw blood if I wanted. Instead I looked at him, really looked, and saw the tired lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint scar along his jaw, the way he wasn't moving closer even though instinct said he could. He wasn't demanding anything, not now, not that night. I hated how much that mattered. My pulse was a drum in my ears. Ryan sighed, dragging a hand through his hair like he wanted to shake the whole moment off his shoulders. "Say the word," he said quietly. "I'll back off. I won't come near you again." That should have been a gift. Instead it landed like a stone in my ribs. Because I didn't want him to back off. Not really. I stepped around the counter before my brain could catch up. The distance between us disappeared too fast. Ryan straightened, eyes searching mine like he was checking for permission carved into my face. I kissed him before either of us could speak. It wasn't smooth. My teeth clicked against his because I didn't know what I was doing except this. My hands fisted in his shirt like I was furious with him, with myself, with the whole damn bond humming under my skin. Ryan froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed me back carefully, like he thought I might break if he pushed too hard. I hated careful. I deepened it just to spite both of us. The mug on the counter wobbled, fell, shattered somewhere near our feet. Neither of us moved to fix it. His hand stayed at my waist, steady, warm, but not caging me in. I realized he was letting me set the pace. letting me burn off anger, or want, or whatever this was without taking an inch I didn't give. When we broke apart, both of us breathing unevenly, my forehead hit his shoulder because my knees had apparently clocked out for the evening. "This doesn't fix anything," I said into the fabric of his shirt. "I know," Ryan said. His voice was rougher now, like gravel under tires. "And I still don't trust you." "Fair." His hand settled between my shoulder blades, not pulling, just there. The bond under my skin wasn't roaring anymore. It hummed like a wire cooling after a surge. I stepped back first. His shirt was wrinkled where I'd grabbed it, his hair mussed, his expression unreadable except for the slight curve at the corner of his mouth, like he didn't know whether to smile or stay silent. "This doesn't mean anything," I said, mostly to myself. "Okay," Ryan said softly, like he believed me even when we both knew better. The broken mug glittered on the floor. Neither of us bent to clean it up. I didn't plan to ask. It started with an offhand comment from one of Casey's friends at the bar. A story half told over cheap beer and louder music. Something about Ryan years ago, walking away from a bond most people would have killed to keep. "Guy's crazy," the friend had said, shaking his head like Ryan was a headline he couldn't believe. "Who turns down a match like that? Perfect on paper. Family, money, reputation." I tuned out the rest. Perfect on paper. I left before Casey could ask why I was quiet. By the time I found Ryan, the words were already eating holes through the back of my teeth. The city was a different animal at night. Neon blurred into puddles, street lamps flickered like tired stars, and somewhere a saxophone bled music into the damp air. We walked side by side without touching, like we hadn't kissed in his kitchen 2 days ago, like my brain wasn't still replaying it when I tried to sleep. I shoved my hands deeper into my jacket pockets. "So," I said casually, which meant not casually at all, "you ever going to tell me why you walked away from your first bond?" Ryan didn't flinch, didn't even slow down. He just exhaled a thin stream of white into the cold air. "Who told you?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "Guess not," he said after a beat. We turned down a quieter street. Storefronts slept behind metal shutters. A stray cat watched us from under a bench like it expected drama. Ryan's voice, when it came, was even. Too even. She wanted the name, the money, the image. I was an accessory. Looked good in pictures, didn't talk too much. That's all she needed. I glanced at him. His face gave nothing away, but his hands were shoved into his coat pockets like maybe they'd tighten otherwise. "So you left," I said. I told her no before the bond could root too deep. He shrugged one shoulder. "Everyone said I was insane. That you don't get to refuse fate." "And you?" "I figured fate could go to hell." We passed a flickering street light. It painted him in broken gold for half a second, and I caught the edge of something there. Not anger exactly. Not regret. Something quieter. "She didn't love me," Ryan said. "She loved what I made her look like." Big difference. I didn't know what to say to that, because I kept expecting him to be unshakable, the kind of alpha people wrote rules about. Instead, here he was, telling me about the time he'd been wanted like a car or a watch. Valuable until inconvenient. "Everyone thought I'd crawl back," Ryan added. "I didn't." "So you chose to be alone." He nodded once. "Better than being somebody's prop." We walked in silence for a while. My brain threw sparks against the dark. This picture of him, younger maybe, with someone perfect on paper who saw him as a name before a man. How it must have felt to break something the whole world told you to keep. "You don't regret it?" I asked finally. Ryan shook his head. "Not for a second." The wind cut between buildings, sharp enough to sting. I pulled my jacket tighter, watching him from the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking at me, just the sidewalk, the puddles, the way our shadows stretched and shrank under each passing light. I expected to see triumph there, or bitterness, something loud. But Ryan just looked tired, like the kind of tired that doesn't fade after a weekend of sleep. And for the first time, I didn't see the calm, put-together alpha who kept stepping in when I needed him. I saw the man who'd once been told he was only worth what other people could take. It landed somewhere low in my chest, heavy and awkward. The kind of feeling you didn't name out loud. We stopped at a crosswalk. The light changed slow as syrup. "I thought you should know," Ryan said finally, eyes on the empty street ahead. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm glad I do." And for once, I meant it. Ryan didn't tell me everything at once. It came in pieces, like watching someone rebuild a house by handing you one brick at a time. A story here, a detail there, the kind of things you only shared when you weren't sure if the other person would stay long enough to hear the whole thing. Some nights we walked through the city until the lights blurred and the coffee shops closed. Ryan talked about his father, quiet, strict, the kind of man who believed emotion was something you locked in a drawer. About boxing in college, how he liked the rhythm until his shoulder went out and the doctors told him to find a safer hobby. About the job sites now, noise, dust, and the satisfaction of making something that stayed standing when you left. He didn't talk like he wanted pity, just honesty, laid out between us like cards on the table. And somewhere between the stories about broken bones and crooked bosses, I realized I wasn't waiting for the catch anymore, because there wasn't one. One evening we ended up on my couch, because the rain had bullied us inside. Ryan sat at the far end like he was giving me room to breathe, but the apartment felt different with him there, less like walls, more like space. I leaned back, socks damp from the dash upstairs, and realized the air wasn't tight in my lungs the way it usually was when someone else filled the silence. "Why are you really here?" I asked finally. Ryan tilted his head, considering. "Because I like talking to you. That's it? And because you look at me like I'm a person, not a project," he said simply. "Not many people do." I didn't have an answer for that, so I kicked off my shoes instead. "You're terrible at selling yourself, you know." "Not selling anything," he said with a small smile. "Just showing up." And maybe that was the difference. My ex had come with promises and speeches and a future shaped like a cage. Ryan just came back, again and again. No demands. No script. I didn't say any of that out loud, but something in my shoulders finally unclenched. Of course, my friends noticed. Casey cornered me after work with all the subtlety of a car alarm. "So," he said, dragging out the vowel like it had personally offended him. "You and the quiet giant. That a thing now?" I glared. "We talk. That's it." "Right," Casey said, grinning. "Talking, sure. That explains the fact you don't look like a haunted house anymore." "I hate you," I muttered. "You love me," he said cheerfully. "But not as much as you love Mr. Brooding Construction Guy." I threw a napkin at his head. The worst part? I didn't even deny it fast enough. A week later, Ryan and I ended up on his balcony with takeout containers balanced on the railing. The city stretched below, restless and glowing. He told me about the first time he walked off a job site because the foreman screamed at a rookie until the kid cried, about how he sent money to his sister out of state, even though she told him to keep it, about nights when the apartment felt too quiet, and he almost called people he shouldn't. "Why tell me all this?" I asked softly. Ryan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, gaze somewhere over the rooftops. "Because I want you to know what you're dealing with. I'm not shiny or simple. I figured that out," I said dryly. He glanced over, the corner of his mouth twitching. "And you're still here, unfortunately." That earned me a quiet laugh. Later, when the food was gone and the city had folded itself into something softer, Ryan said, "I can wait, you know." I looked over. "For what?" "For you to decide what you want from this." "From me?" His eyes stayed on the skyline like it was easier than looking at me. "I'm not in a hurry." The words landed heavier than I expected. Not like pressure, the opposite. Like a door left open with no one standing behind it. "You're serious," I said finally. "Dead serious," Ryan said. "Take all the time you need." I didn't answer right away. But something under my ribs loosened, like a knot pulling slack. Because for the first time in longer than I could remember, I believed someone meant it. When Ryan left that night, the apartment didn't feel empty. It felt steady. Like maybe I could stop bracing for the floor to drop out from under me. Like maybe this didn't have to end the way everything else had. I locked the door, leaned against it, and realized I was smiling. Just a little. But it was a start. The rain had been steady all evening, tapping against the windows like it was trying to get in. My apartment was dim, except for the warm lamp in the corner, the one that made everything look softer than it was. Ryan sat on the couch, long legs stretched out, one arm draped casually over the back. He looked comfortable here now, like he belonged, and maybe that was what did it. Because for weeks, he hadn't asked for anything. No pressure, no ultimatums, just showing up, fixing my leaky sink when I complained about it under my breath, dropping off coffee when I was too busy to remember food existed, listening without trying to fix me. And somewhere along the way, the noise in my head had quieted. I stood by the window for a long time, watching water slide down the glass, and felt the decision settle in my chest like a stone finding the bottom of a river. When I turned around, Ryan was watching me, not like a hunter, not like a man waiting for the answer to a question, just steady, patient, the way he always was. I crossed the room before I could second-guess myself. "Ryan," I said, and my voice sounded strange in my own ears, lighter somehow. "Yeah?" he asked softly. I stopped in front of him, heart banging around like it didn't know what calm felt like. That night, it wasn't my choice, not really. His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders went still. I took a breath. This is me choosing. His eyes searched mine, like he wanted to be absolutely sure. "You're certain?" "Yeah," I swallowed. "Now I choose you." For a second, neither of us moved. The rain filled the room like a third heartbeat. Then Ryan reached up slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted. I didn't. His hand settled against my jaw, warm and careful, like I was made of something worth handling right. The kiss was nothing like the first one. No anger, no panic, just heat unfolding slowly. A tide coming in instead of a wave crashing down. My hands found his shoulders, the solid weight of him grounding me. He kissed like someone who knew the value of silence, who didn't need to rush through it. When we broke apart, I could still feel the shape of him everywhere. Ryan rested his forehead against mine. "You sure?" he asked again, voice low enough that I felt it more than heard it. I nodded, and maybe that was all he'd been waiting for, because after that, he pulled me closer, not rough or demanding, just steady, like the world outside could fall apart and he'd still be here. Later, we ended up tangled on the couch, the lamp throwing lazy shadows across the room. My head rested against his chest, his arm around me, the rain still tapping its rhythm against the glass. It didn't feel like the movies. No sweeping music, no perfect lighting, just warmth seeping into the cracks I hadn't realized were still there. Ryan's thumb traced slow circles on my shoulder. Not asking, not taking, just there. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months, maybe years, because for the first time since this whole mess started, there was no fight in me, no panic buzzing under my skin, just quiet, just him, and the bond, whatever it was, settled low and steady. Not chains or cages this time. Something alive, something chosen. When I finally spoke, it came out softer than I meant. "You were right." "About what?" "That you could wait." Ryan huffed a small laugh against my hair. "Worth it," he said simply. I believed him. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd finally stopped running. A few weeks later, my apartment looked different. Not because we redecorated. Ryan still claimed my choice in throw pillows was chaotic, at best, but because he was here often enough that the place felt bigger somehow. Quieter in the right ways, louder in the ones that mattered. His jacket lived on the back of my chair. His books piled on my coffee table next to mine. The smell of cedar lingered even when he left, which he rarely did for long. We were a thing now. A real, actual thing. I hadn't said the word boyfriend out loud yet, but my friends had been circling it like sharks. Casey nearly choked on his fries the first time Ryan showed up to game night carrying takeout like he belonged there. "Look at this," Casey announced to the table. "Mr. Tall, dark and brooding just strolls in like he owns the place." "He doesn't own it," I said. "Yet," muttered Ben. The traitor. Ryan raised an eyebrow but didn't take the bait, just started unpacking containers. The man was unflappable. Casey leaned across the table toward Ben. Bet you $5 Jules calls him homie by the end of the month. 10 says it's baby first. Ben shot back. I groaned. You two need new hobbies. Casey grinned like Christmas came early. Oh, we've got one. It's watching you pretend you're not disgustingly happy. I threw a napkin at him. Ryan handed me a dumpling like we were conspiring in silence. I didn't even have to look at him to know he was trying not to laugh. Later, when the dishes were done and the city outside had gone soft with evening, we ended up on my couch again. It had become a habit, me stretched out with my feet in his lap, Ryan pretending to read while his hand traced idle patterns along my ankle. I watched the rain through the window, the glow of streetlights turning the puddles gold. I used to hate the idea of fate, I said finally. Ryan looked over his book, one brow raised. Yeah? Yeah. Felt like an excuse people used when they didn't want to take responsibility. Like, oh, it was destiny. No, maybe you just made a choice and don't want to admit it. Ryan's thumb paused against my skin, then kept moving. And now? I thought about the night we met. About the fights, the late walks, the quiet confessions over takeout. About him waiting without asking for anything back until I was ready to give it. Now I think choice is better, I said slowly. Because I didn't have to stay. You didn't have to wait, and yet. I gestured vaguely between us. Here we are. Ryan closed the book, leaning back with that small, almost secret smile he got sometimes. Here we are, he echoed. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, with his hand warm around mine, it felt less like fate and more like something we'd built ourselves, messy, imperfect, but ours. And for the first time in forever, that was enough.